My name is Sarah, and I'm 29. I'm sitting at our kitchen table staring at Mom's coffee mug cold and untouched for 3 days. She's supposed to be on a business trip, but my gut screams something's wrong. Her phone's dead. Dad's dodging questions, and I found a note in her handwriting. Under the bed, don't trust him. My heart's racing. I keep picturing Mom's warm hugs, now replaced by this eerie silence. What's Dad hiding? Have you ever felt a truth you couldn't prove? Tell me where you're watching from, and please like and subscribe to follow my story. I couldn't shake that note. It was tucked in my pocket. Mom's handwriting, burning a hole through my jeans. I stood in the living room staring at the family photos on the mantel. There was one from last Christmas, Mom laughing her arm around Hannah, Dad grinning like he hadn't a care. Now the house felt too big, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I needed answers. I found Dad in the garage tinkering with his old Chevy. The air smelled of oil and sawdust, and the radio played some country song he loved. He was bent over the engine, his flannel shirt stained with grease. I took a deep breath, my hands clenching. "Dad, where's Mom really at?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't look up, just kept twisting a wrench.
"I told you, Sarah. Chicago. Work conference. She'll be back Sunday."
His tone was flat, like he was reading a script. I stepped closer, the note heavy in my pocket.
"Why's her phone off? She always texts me even on trips. And why'd you lock your study last night?"
My words came out sharper than I meant, but I couldn't stop. The questions had been piling up, and that note "don't trust him" made my skin crawl. Dad finally straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. His eyes flicked to me, then away, too quick.
"You're making a mountain out of nothing. She's busy, and my study's private. Always has been."
He turned back to the car, dismissing me. My chest tightened. I remembered being 10, asking why he missed my piano recital and him brushing me off the same way. But this wasn't about a recital. This was Mom. Dad? I'm not a kid. Something's wrong. I can feel it. My voice cracked, and I hated how small it sounded. He slammed the hood shut, the bang echoing in the garage. "Enough, Sarah. You're stirring up trouble for no reason. Go help Hannah with dinner or something." His face was red, his jaw tight, and for a second I didn't recognize him. This wasn't the dad who taught me to ride a bike. This was someone else. I backed away, my heart pounding. As I turned to leave, I caught Hannah standing in the doorway, her backpack slung over one shoulder. She was 16, all sharp angles, and wary eyes, her blonde hair tied back in a messy bun. She must have just gotten home from school. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice low, like she was afraid of the answer.
"Nothing," Dad said, quickly forcing a smile. "Just Sarah being dramatic. Right, kiddo?"
He looked at me, daring me to push further. I wanted to scream to tell Hannah about the note, but her gaze darted between us, nervous. She idolized Dad always had. If I said something now, she'd take his side. "Yeah," I muttered, my throat tight. "Nothing." But as I walked back to the house, Hannah caught up with me in the hallway. The air inside was thick with the smell of lavender from Mom's candles, and it hit me like a punch. "Sarah, what's with you and Dad?" she whispered, glancing over her shoulder. "You're freaking me out." I hesitated. I didn't want to drag her into this, not yet, but she deserved to know something. "Hannah, have you talked to Mom? Like at all?" I kept my voice soft, like I was coaxing a scared animal. She frowned, shifting her backpack. "No. Dad said she's super busy." "Why?" Her eyes searched mine, and I saw a flicker of doubt, like she felt the same wrongness I did. I took a deep breath. "I found something. A note from Mom. It's weird, and Dad's lying about her trip. I just know it. I didn't pull out the note. Not yet. I needed her to trust me first. Hannah's face hardened. You're wrong. Dad wouldn't lie. Mom's fine, Sarah. You're just... I don't know, paranoid. But her voice wavered and she hugged her arms around herself. Don't mess this up, okay? We're already a mess without Mom here. Her words stung like she thought I was the problem. I wanted to shake her to make her see, but she was already turning away, heading to her room. The slam of her door echoed down the hall. I stood there alone, the weight of the note pressing against me. Dad's anger, Hannah's denial. It was all closing in. But I couldn't stop now. I slipped upstairs to Mom's bedroom, my hands trembling. The room was just as she'd left it, bed neatly made, her novels stacked on the nightstand, a faint trace of her perfume lingering. I knelt by her closet, pushing aside her dresses. My fingers brushed something soft, her favorite scarf, the blue one she wore every winter. She'd never leave without it. I held it to my face, breathing in the lavender, and my eyes burned. Then I saw it, a small wooden box tucked in the corner, half hidden by a pair of boots. It wasn't locked, but it felt heavy, like it held secrets. Inside was a folded letter sealed with my name on it in Mom's handwriting. My heart stopped. I didn't open it, not yet. I was too scared of what it might say. But as I sat there clutching the scarf and the letter, I knew I couldn't trust Dad. Not anymore. I slipped the letter into my pocket next to Mom's note and closed the closet door. The weight of both papers pressed against my thigh like they were alive, urging me to act. Downstairs, the house was too still, the ticking of the living room clock the only sound. I needed to know more, but Dad and Hannah were walls I couldn't climb yet. There was one person who might have answers. Karen, Mom's co-worker at the accounting firm. They'd been friends for years, sharing coffee breaks and office gossip. If anyone knew about this supposed conference, it'd be her. I grabbed my phone and scrolled to Karen's number, my thumb hesitating over the call button. What if she confirmed Dad's story? What if she didn't? I paced Mom's bedroom, the carpet soft under my sneakers, and hit call before I could overthink it. The line rang twice, then Karen's warm voice came through. Sarah? Hey, been a while. Everything okay? I swallowed, trying to sound casual. Yeah, just checking in. Have you heard from Mom? She's at that Chicago conference, right? I held my breath, my free hand clutching the scarf I'd left on the bed. There was a pause too long. Conference? Karen's tone shifted, confused. There's no conference this week. We've got a big audit, so nobody's traveling. I saw your mom last Friday, though. She seemed distracted. Said she had some family stuff to sort out. My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step on a staircase. You're sure Dad said she's been gone since Monday? Work trip. My voice sounded thin, desperate. Karen hesitated. I'm positive, Sarah. No trips on the schedule. Is something wrong? Should I come over? Her concern was genuine, but it only made the room feel smaller, the air harder to breathe. No, it's fine. I lied, my mind racing. Just a mix-up. Thanks, Karen. I hung up before she could ask more, my hands shaking. Dad lied, straight to my face. The garage, his snapped words that locked study, it was all a cover. But for what? I sank onto Mom's bed, the scarf slipping to the floor, and stared at the ceiling, trying to piece it together. The note's words echoed, "Don't trust him." I needed to see that study. Dad spent hours in there, always with the door shut, the key in his pocket. If he was hiding something, it'd be there. I crept downstairs, the house dark, except for a sliver of light under Hannah's door. I could hear her music soft and tinny through her earbuds. Part of me wanted to knock to tell her about Karen, but her words from earlier, paranoid, messing things up, stopped me.
She wasn't ready. The study was at the end of the hall, its oak door looming like a guard. I tried the handle just in case, but it was locked as always. I knelt, peering through the keyhole, but saw only shadows and the edge of Dad's desk. My fingers brushed the doorknob cold and unyielding, and frustration bubbled up. I needed that key. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around, heart in my throat, to see Hannah, her arms crossed, eyes narrow. "What are you doing?" she hissed, her voice barely above a whisper. She was in her pajamas, a faded band tee, and sweatpants, but her stance was all defiance. I stood, trying to look calm. "Just checking something." "Go back to bed, Hannah." I didn't want her caught in this, not yet. She stepped closer, her voice sharp. "You're sneaking around Dad's study after that fight in the garage? Sarah, you're gonna ruin everything. Mom's coming back, and you're making Dad hate us." Her words cut each one a reminder of how much she trusted him. I wanted to tell her about Karen, about the lie, but the hurt in her eyes stopped me. She was scared, clinging to the dad she knew. "Hannah, I'm not trying to ruin anything. I need to know Mom's okay." My voice softened, pleading. She shook her head, tears glinting. "You're wrong about him. You're gonna break this family apart, and I'll never forgive you." She turned and stormed back to her room, the door clicking shut. I stood there, frozen, her words echoing in my head. Break this family. Was I doubt crept in cold and heavy. But then I felt the letter and note in my pocket, Mom's handwriting, a quiet scream. I couldn't stop now. I headed to the kitchen where Dad kept his jacket on a hook. Maybe the key was there. As I rummaged through his pockets, my fingers brushed something else, a small folded receipt. I unfolded it, my breath catching. It was for a hardware store dated Monday, listing a padlock and chain. My blood ran cold. Why would Dad need those? Before I could process it, the front door creaked open. I shoved the receipt back, my heart hammering, and ducked behind the counter. Dad's boots thudded against the floor, slow and deliberate. He paused, like he sensed something, then muttered to himself, too low to hear. The study door clicked open, then shut, the lock snapping into place. I waited, barely breathing, until his footsteps faded upstairs. I slid to the floor, my back against the cabinet, the receipt's details burned into my mind. A padlock, a chain, Mom's note, Karen's words. It was all connected, and the truth was slipping closer, sharp and terrifying. I had to get into that study no matter what Hannah thought, no matter what Dad did. Mom needed me. I sat on the kitchen floor, the receipt crumpled in my fist, my pulse still racing from Dad's footsteps. The house was dark now, the clock ticking past midnight. That padlock, the chain, it wasn't random. It was tied to Mom, to that note, to whatever Dad was hiding. I needed to see her diary. If she'd suspected something, maybe she'd left more clues. I crept upstairs, avoiding the creaky third step, and slipped into Mom's bedroom. The air was heavy with her absence. The bed untouched, her slippers still by the dresser. I pulled the wooden box from the closet where I'd hidden the diary after finding the letter. The key from the note fit perfectly, and the lock clicked open. My hands shook as I flipped through the pages, Mom's neat cursive spilling out her thoughts. The entries started normal work stress, Hannah's school play, Dad's late nights at the office. But a month ago, things changed. James is hiding something, she wrote. Bank statements don't add up. He's taking cash thousands and won't explain. I asked, and he yelled, said it's his money. I'm scared. My throat tightened. Mom was scared. Of Dad. I kept reading, each page worse. She'd found strange deposits in their joint account transfers to an offshore bank. I confronted him, one entry said. He grabbed my wrist hard.
told me to stay out of it. I don't know who he is anymore. I touched the page, imagining her fear, her pen trembling as she wrote. My anger grew hot and sharp, but so did my grief. How had I missed this? How had we all? A noise snapped me out of it. A soft creak from the hallway. I froze, clutching the diary. The door was cracked open, and I saw a shadow move. Sarah Hannah's voice was a whisper, barely audible. She stepped in, her eyes, wide hair messy from sleep. "What are you doing in here? It's the middle of the night." I shoved the diary under a pillow, my heart pounding. "Couldn't sleep," I said, forcing my voice to stay even. "Just missing Mom." It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Hannah frowned, hugging herself. "You're acting weird." First the garage, then Dad's study. Now this. She glanced at the bed like she knew I was hiding something. "I heard you on the phone earlier." "Who were you talking to?" I cursed silently. "She must have overheard me with Karen." I stood, trying to block the pillow. "Just a friend." "Hannah, go back to bed. It's late." But my voice betrayed me, too sharp, too guilty. "Hannah, keep it down," I hissed, stepping closer. "I'm trying to figure out where Mom is. Dad's not telling us everything. You know that." I wanted to tell her about the diary, the receipt, but her loyalty to Dad stopped me. She'd shut down, or worse, tell him. Her eyes narrowed. "You're obsessed. Mom's fine. She's working. You're just making Dad the bad guy because you're mad at him." But then she hesitated, her gaze dropping. I saw something okay yesterday in the basement. Dad was moving this big metal box. He looked scared. I didn't ask, but it was weird." My breath caught. A metal box, like the one Mom mentioned in her diary where Dad kept his papers. I grabbed Hannah's arm, too eager. "What kind of box? Did you see what was in it?" She pulled away, scared. "I don't know. It was locked. I wasn't spying like you. I don't want to think Dad's bad, Sarah. He's our dad." Her voice cracked, and I saw the fear in her eyes, the same fear I felt reading Mom's words. I softened, guilt hitting me. I don't want that either. But Mom's not answering, and Dad's lying. We have to know the truth. I reached for her, but she backed toward the door. "I can't do this," she whispered. "You're gonna make everything worse." She turned and fled, her footsteps soft but hurried. I sank onto the bed, the diary heavy in my hands. Hannah's words stung, but her confession about the box was a lead. I flipped to the last entry, dated the day Mom disappeared. "James met someone at the house last night," she wrote. "A man, rough voice, talking about moving money fast. I heard them through the vent. James said he'd handle me. I'm locking this away. If something happens, Sarah, check under the bed." My blood ran cold. "Handle me." I slid to the floor, crawling under the bed, my fingers searching the wooden frame. There it was, a hidden latch, cold and metal, tucked in the corner. I pulled, but it wouldn't budge, locked tight. My heart raced as I imagined what was behind it. A secret. A truth. Maybe Mom herself. I tugged harder, desperate, but it held fast, mocking me. Footsteps thudded upstairs, Dad awake. Panic surged. If he caught me here now with the diary, what would he do? I shoved the diary back in the box, my hands trembling, and hid it in the closet. The latch, the box, Mom's fear, it was all real, and Dad was at the center. I had to get that key no matter what. I stumbled out of Mom's room, my chest tight, the locked latch under the bed, searing my thoughts. Dad's footsteps were upstairs pacing, and every creak of the floorboards felt like a warning.
I slipped into the hallway, my sneakers silent on the carpet, and pressed myself against the wall, listening. His voice came through low and urgent on the phone. "It's under control," he muttered. "No one's looking. Just keep the plan moving." My stomach twisted. Who was he talking to? What plan? I needed that key to the study now, more than ever. The receipt, the diary, the latch. It all pointed to something bigger, something Dad was desperate to hide. I crept to the kitchen where his jacket still hung on the hook. My hands shook as I searched the pockets again, praying the key was there. Nothing but lint and a crumpled gum wrapper. My frustration boiled over, and I had to bite my lip to keep from cursing out loud. Then I heard a faint jingle from the living room. I froze, my heart hammering. Dad was coming down the stairs, his boots heavy, the keys clinking in his hand. I ducked behind the counter, my breath shallow as he passed through the kitchen. He didn't see me, but his face was tense, his jaw set like he was bracing for a fight. He headed straight for the study, the door clicking open, then shut, the lock snapping into place. I waited, counting seconds, until I was sure he was settled. The house was quiet again, but the silence felt like a trap closing in. I had to move. I tiptoed to the basement door, Hannah's words about the metal box echoing in my head. If I couldn't get into the study, maybe the basement held answers. The stairs creaked under my weight, and the air grew damp, smelling of mildew and old paint. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting long shadows. The basement was cluttered boxes of Christmas decorations, Dad's old golf clubs, a broken lamp. I scanned the shelves, my eyes landing on a corner piled with tarps. Something glinted beneath them. I pulled the tarps aside, revealing a heavy metal box, its surface scratched but sturdy, secured with a shiny new padlock. My breath caught. This was it, the box Hannah saw, the one tied to the receipt. I tugged at the lock, but it didn't budge. Of course it didn't. I sank to my knees, my fingers tracing the cold metal, imagining what was inside. Documents. Money. Something worse. Mom's diary mentioned Dad's papers, his secret deals. Was this his hiding place? My anger flared sharp and raw. He'd built a whole life of lies right under our noses, and Mom was paying the price. I wanted to scream, to smash the box open, but I was helpless without the key. A soft noise broke my thoughts, a shuffle at the top of the stairs. I spun around, my pulse spiking. Sarah Hannah's voice, small and shaky, came from the darkness. She stepped into the light, her face, pale eyes red like she'd been crying. "I knew you'd be down here. You're not giving up, are you?" I stood, wiping my hands on my jeans, trying to look calm. "Hannah, you said you saw this box. It's locked. Dad's hiding something, and it's about Mom. Help me open it." My voice was steady, but inside I was pleading. She shook her head, her arms crossed tight. "You're wrong. You keep saying Dad's bad, but you don't know. Maybe Mom's the one who messed up. Maybe she's hiding, and Dad's protecting us." Her words were desperate, like she was trying to convince herself. I stepped closer, my voice low. "Hannah, I read Mom's diary. She was scared of Dad. He hurt her, lied about money, about everything. That box could prove it. Don't you want to know where she is?" I hated pushing her, but I had no choice. Her eyes filled with tears, and she backed away. "Stop it! You're tearing us apart! I hate you for this, Sarah! I hate you!" She turned and ran up the stairs, her sobs echoing behind her. Her words hit like a slap, and I sank against the box, my legs weak. "Hate you." My little sister, the one I'd braided hair for shared secrets with, she hated me. I pressed my hands to my face, fighting the tears. I was losing her, losing Mom.
losing everything, and Dad was at the center of it all. My anger surged, but so did my fear. What if Hannah was right? What if I was wrong and this was all a mistake? Then I heard a low, rhythmic thud from upstairs coming from the master bedroom. My blood ran cold. It wasn't footsteps. It was something else, something deliberate like a signal. I climbed the stairs, my heart in my throat, and paused outside Mom's room. The thud came again, faint, but steady from under the bed. I dropped to my knees, my fingers fumbling for the latch I'd found earlier. It was still locked, but the sound was clearer now, almost like a plea. "Mom!" I whispered, my voice barely audible. No answer, but the thudding stopped, and the silence was worse. My hands trembled as I pressed my ear to the floor, straining for any sign. Nothing. Just my own heartbeat, loud and frantic. I was so close, but the lock, the key, Dad's lies, they were all in my way. And Hannah's hate was a weight I couldn't shake. My ear was pressed to the floor, the cold wood biting into my cheek, but the thudding had stopped. The silence was deafening, like the house itself was holding its breath. I scrambled to my feet, my hands fumbling for the latch under Mom's bed. That sound, it had to be her. My fingers traced the metal slick with my sweat, but the lock wouldn't budge. I needed something to pry it open, anything. I grabbed a hairpin from Mom's nightstand, my hands shaking so bad I dropped it twice. I knelt again, working the pin into the latch, twisting and pushing. My breath came in short gasps, my mind racing. The diary, the receipt, the box in the basement, they all led here to this moment. I couldn't be wrong. I wouldn't let myself be. The pin slipped, scraping my knuckle, and a sharp pain shot through my hand. I bit my lip, tasting blood, and kept going. Then a faint click. The latch loosened just enough to pull. I yanked hard, and the panel gave way, revealing a narrow crawl space, barely 2 feet high, shrouded in darkness. A stale, musty smell hit me, mixed with something sour, like sweat. My heart pounded as I leaned in my phone's flashlight, cutting through the gloom. The beam caught something, a glint of metal, then a shape, curled and still. "Mom!" I whispered, my voice breaking. A soft moan answered, weak but real. I crawled forward, ignoring the splinters digging into my palms. There she was, her body tucked against the wall, her wrists bound with duct tape, her face pale and bruised. Her eyes fluttered open, meeting mine, and they were filled with a mix of relief and terror. "Sarah?" She rasped, her voice barely audible. "You found me." My throat closed up, tears blurring my vision. I reached for her, my fingers brushing her clammy skin. She was alive, but barely, her lips cracked, her breathing shallow. "I'm here," I choked out, fumbling to untie the tape. It was sticky, tearing at her skin, and she winced, but didn't cry out. My hands shook as I worked my mind, screaming. Dad did this. My dad. How long? I asked, my voice trembling. How did he? Why I couldn't finish? The words felt too big, too wrong. Mom's eyes darted to the crawl space's edge, like she was listening for something. Dazed, she whispered. He drugged my tea. Said I'd ruin everything. His deal's the money. Her voice faded, and she coughed a dry, painful sound. I pulled her closer, cradling her head, and felt her tremble against me. My anger exploded, a white-hot wave that drowned out my fear. Deals. Money. He'd locked her here under the bed like she was nothing. The man who'd carried me on his shoulders, who'd kissed her goodnight, was a monster. I wanted to scream, to tear the house apart, but Mom's hand gripped mine, weak but urgent. "Get out," she said. "He's coming back." Before I could respond, a floorboard creaked outside the door. My blood froze. Heavy footsteps, deliberate, moving closer. "Dad." I shoved my phone into my pocket, the flashlight cutting off, plunging us into darkness. I held Mom tighter, my heart slamming against my ribs. The door handle rattled, and I heard his voice low and sharp. "Sarah, you in there?" My mouth went dry. I couldn't answer, couldn't move. Mom's breathing quickened, her nails digging into my arm. The handle turned, and the door swung open slow and heavy. Light spilled in, and I saw his silhouette broad and looming, filling the doorway. He stepped inside his boots, thudding against the floor, and my eyes locked on the glint of a key ring in his hand. The study key, the basement key, maybe the key to this nightmare. "Sarah," he said again, his voice eerily calm, like he was calling me for dinner. "What are you doing in here?" His eyes scanned the room, lingering on the bed, and I realized the crawl space panel was still ajar. My stomach lurched. If he saw it, if he knew I'd found her. I forced myself to stand, shielding Mom with my body, my legs trembling. "Just looking for something," I stammered, my voice thin. "Mom's scarf. I miss her." The lie tasted bitter, but I prayed he'd buy it. His gaze narrowed, and he took a step closer, his shadow swallowing the light. "You've been asking a lot of questions," he said, his tone shifting colder now. "Poking around where you don't belong. That's not like you, kiddo." The word kiddo twisted like a knife, a mockery of the dad I thought I knew. My mind raced, searching for a way out, but the room felt smaller, the walls closing in. Mom's hand brushed mine. Her touch, faint, but desperate, and I looked down to see her eyes, wide with fear, urging me to fight. But how Hannah was lost to me, clinging to Dad's hand, her face a mask of doubt. The room spun, and I felt the weight of every lie, every secret crushing me. Dad stepped closer, his phone raised again, and I knew he wasn't bluffing. He'd call, he'd lie, and I'd lose everything. My chest ached like my heart was splintering, and I sank to my knees beside the bed, Mom's bound hands in mine. The truth was out, but it didn't free me. It trapped me exposed and powerless, with Dad's shadow looming over us all. Dad's hand closed around my wrist, his grip tight enough to bruise. His eyes bored into mine, searching, and I felt Mom's shallow breaths behind me. Her presence, a fragile thread holding me together. The room was suffocating, the air thick with his cologne and my fear. Hannah stood frozen in the doorway, her face a mix of confusion and dread, and I wanted to scream at her, to run to help, but my voice was trapped. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," Dad said, his voice low, almost gentle, but it carried a threat that made my skin crawl. He let go of my wrist, but his body blocked the path to the door, caging me in. "I've done everything for this family. Everything. And you're tearing it apart with your questions." My heart pounded, but his words lit a spark of fury. "Everything," I spat, my voice shaking, but loud. "You locked Mom under the bed. You drugged her, lied to us. What kind of father does that?" The truth spilled out raw and jagged, and I saw Hannah flinch, her hands covering her mouth. Dad's face changed, the mask slipping. His jaw clenched, and his eyes darkened like I'd crossed a line he'd warned me not to. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, stepping closer, his voice a hiss. "You think you're so smart," Sarah digging through her things, calling her friends. "You're just a kid who can't mind her own business." His words stung, each one a slap, but what hurt more was the way he said them, like I was nothing. Like my love for Mom was a childish game. I wanted to lunge at him, to claw at the lies he'd built. But Mom's faint whimper stopped me. She was still there, still fighting, and I couldn't lose focus. Hannah's voice broke the tension, small and trembling. "Dad, is it true? Did you hurt Mom?" She stepped forward, her eyes wide, pleading for him to deny it. For a moment, I thought she'd finally see him for what he was. But Dad turned to her, his face softening, and he knelt, his voice syrupy sweet. "Hannah, sweetheart, your sister's confused. She's upset because Mom's working and she's making up stories. You know I'd never hurt anyone." He reached for her hand, and she let him take it, her shoulders relaxing, her trust in him, a knife in my chest. I stared at her, my sister, my ally, and felt the ground shift beneath me. "Hannah?" "No," I said, my voice cracking. "You saw the box in the basement. You heard him on the phone. He's lying." But she wouldn't look at me. Her gaze fixed on Dad like he was her anchor. Dad stood, his hand still holding hers, and turned back to me. "You're out of control, Sarah," he said, his tone sharp now, cutting. "You're scaring your sister, breaking into my study, my room. Maybe I should call the police, tell them my daughter's lost it, making wild accusations." He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen, and my blood ran cold. The threat was real, and it hit like a punch. He was twisting it all, painting me as the villain, the crazy one. I could see it now, cops showing up, believing his calm voice, his lies, while Mom lay trapped, fading. My knees buckled, and I grabbed the bedpost to steady myself, my vision blurring with tears. "You can't do this," I whispered, but it sounded weak, defeated. "Oh, I can," he said, his voice dripping with certainty. "You've got no proof, Sarah. Just a note and some wild ideas. Who's gonna believe you over me?" He smiled, a cold, triumphant curve of his lips, and it was like seeing a stranger wearing my father's face. Dad's bulk blocked the doorway, his phone still raised like a weapon, but his eyes betrayed him, wild-cornered. Mom leaned against me, her weight a reminder of what was at stake. Hannah stood frozen, her phone in her hand, her face torn between us. I'd told her to call Mr. Thompson, but her fingers hovered, unmoving. My arm ached where Dad had grabbed me, but the fire inside me burned hotter, fueled by Mom's trust, by the truth I'd clawed my way to. I wasn't backing down. "Move," I said, my voice low, steady, not a plea, but a command. I shifted Mom's weight, guiding her toward the door, my eyes locked on Dad's. He flinched just enough for me to notice, and I seized it. "You're not stopping us. Not this time." His laugh was sharp, forced. "You think you're tough now, Sarah? You're nothing. You'll ruin us all, and for what? Some half-dead story your mom fed you?" His words were meant to cut, but they bounced off me hollow. I saw him for what he was desperate unraveling. Mom's hand tightened on mine, her voice a faint whisper. "Keep going." Her strength even now was a lifeline. I nodded, my resolve hardening, and took another step, angling toward the hallway. The alarm clock cord was still tangled by the nightstand, my backup plan if he lunged. But I needed more than tricks.
I needed to outsmart him. "Hannah," I said softer now, my voice reaching for her. "You don't have to believe me. Just look at Mom. Really look. Then decide." I didn't turn, but I felt her gaze shift, heard her sharp intake of breath as she saw Mom's bruised face, her trembling hands. A sob broke from her, small but real, and I knew I'd reached her even if just a crack. Dad sensed it too. He spun toward her, his voice syrupy again. "Hannah, don't listen to her. She's confused, trying to hurt us. You know me." But his charm was fraying, his hands clenching too tight, and Hannah stepped back, her phone slipping to her side. I saw my chance. The bathroom was just past the hallway, its door narrow but lockable. If I could get Mom there, barricade us in, I could call for help. I moved faster, half carrying Mom, her feet dragging, but trying. Dad lunged his hand, grazing my shoulder, but I twisted, shoving the bed frame between us. The wood scraped the floor loud and jarring, buying us seconds. "Stop!" he roared, his voice shaking the walls, but I didn't look back. I pushed Mom through the bathroom door, her body slumping against the sink. I slammed the door shut, my hands fumbling for the lock. It clicked, and I leaned against it, my breath ragged as Dad's fists pounded the other side. "Open this door, Sarah. You're making a mistake." Mom slid to the floor, her back against the tub, and I knelt beside her, my hands cupping her face. "We're okay," I whispered more to myself than her. "We're getting out." Her eyes, tired but fierce, held mine, and I felt a shift inside me, not just fear, but power, the kind that comes from choosing to fight. I pulled out my phone, my fingers steady now, and dialed 911. The operator's voice was calm, clinical. "What's your emergency?" I kept my voice low, glancing at the door as Dad's pounding slowed, replaced by pacing. "My mom's been locked up by my dad. She's hurt. We're trapped in the bathroom. Please hurry." 1427, Maple Drive. The operator asked questions, names, details, but I kept it short, my eyes on Mom. She was breathing hard, her hand clutching her side, and I noticed a dark bruise peeking from her shirt, fresh and ugly. My stomach churned, but I swallowed it down. "Not now." I had to stay sharp. Dad's voice came through the door, quieter now, manipulative. "Sarah, let's talk. I can explain. You don't want to do this." Think about Hannah. His words were a trap, but they didn't touch me. I'd seen too much, felt too much. He wasn't my dad anymore. I hung up my phone, warm in my hand, and checked the door. The lock was old, flimsy, but it'd hold for now. I grabbed a towel, wrapping it around Mom's shoulders, and sat beside her, the tiles cold against my legs. "They're coming," I said, my voice soft but sure. "We just have to wait." Mom nodded, her lips trembling into a faint smile. "You're so strong," she whispered, and those words hit me harder than Dad's threats. Strong. I hadn't felt it until now, until this tiny tiled room became my battlefield. A soft knock interrupted us, not Dad's heavy fist, but something lighter. Sarah Hannah's voice, barely audible, came through the door. My heart leapt, but I stayed cautious. I didn't call Dad. I called Mr. Thompson. He's coming." Her words were shaky, laced with guilt, but they were enough. I pressed my hand to the door, my throat tight. "Thank you," I said, my voice breaking. She didn't answer, but I heard her footsteps retreat, and I knew she'd chosen us, even if it hurt her. Dad's pacing stopped, replaced by a low mutter, and I realized he hadn't heard her. Good. I looked at Mom, her face pale but resolute, and felt that fire inside me grow. The police were coming. Mr. Thompson was coming, and I'd gotten us this far. Dad's lies, his grip, his threats, they couldn't stop me now. I reached into Mom's pocket, feeling a small, hard shape, a recorder, tiny and black, tucked against her side. My breath caught. Evidence. Her evidence. I held it tight, my eyes meeting hers, and she nodded a silent agreement. We weren't just escaping, we were exposing him. The pounding started again, Dad's voice louder, but I didn't flinch. I sat there, Mom's hand in mine, the recorder in my palm, and let the weight of my choice settle over me, heavy, but right. The bathroom door rattled under Dad's fists, but the lock held a fragile barrier between us and his rage. Mom sat against the tub, her breathing steadier now, the towel draped over her shoulders like a shield. The recorder was still in my hand, its weight grounding me as the operator's promise police are on the way, echoed in my mind. I'd done it. I'd called, I'd protected Mom, but the air was thick with what came next, and my chest felt hollow, waiting for the fallout. A sharp wail broke the silence outside, sirens close and piercing, cutting through the night. Dad's pounding stopped, and I heard his boots stumble back, his voice a muffled curse. My heart raced, relief and dread twisting together. The police were here, but so was the truth, and it would shatter everything. I squeezed Mom's hand, her fingers cold but firm, and she gave me a nod, her eyes carrying a quiet gratitude that made my throat ache. The front door slammed open downstairs, heavy footsteps echoing through the house, followed by sharp voices. "Police, show yourself!" The command was loud, authoritative, and I felt Mom tense beside me. I stood helping her up, her body leaning hard against mine. The bathroom felt smaller now, the tiles too bright, the air too thin. I unlocked the door, my hand steady despite the tremor in my chest, and pushed it open. The hallway was chaos, flashlights slicing through the dark, officers moving fast, their radios crackling. Dad stood at the top of the stairs, his hands raised, his face pale and drawn. "This is a misunderstanding," he was saying, his voice smooth but strained, like he could still talk his way out. Two officers flanked him, one already reaching for cuffs, their faces hard and unyielding. I guided Mom forward, her steps slow, her arm around my waist. The sight of her, bruised, frail, but alive, stopped the room. An officer, a woman with short hair and sharp eyes, rushed to us, her hand gentle on Mom's shoulder. "Ma'am, are you okay?" "We've got paramedics outside." Mom nodded, her voice too weak to answer, and I felt a pang of pride mixed with guilt. I'd gotten her this far, but seeing her like this, so broken, hurt more than I expected. The officer turned to me, her gaze softening. "You called it in. Can you tell us what happened?" I clutched the recorder, its edges digging into my palm, and nodded. "My dad. He locked her up. Under the bed. For days." My voice was quiet, but it carried, and I saw Dad's head snap toward me, his eyes wide with something like betrayal. "Sarah, don't!" He said, his voice cracking, but the cuffs clicked around his wrists, cutting him off. The sound was final, a door slamming shut on the life we'd known. He stared at me, his face a mix of anger and desperation, and for a moment, I saw the dad who'd cheered at my soccer games, who'd made pancakes on Sundays. But that man was gone, buried under his lies. Hannah appeared at the end of the hall, her face streaked with tears, her hands twisting the hem of her shirt. She'd stayed back out of sight, But now she ran to me, her arms wrapping around my waist, her sobs muffled against my chest. "I'm sorry," she whispered over and over, her voice raw. I didn't know. I should have listened. Her guilt was a mirror of my own, and I held her tight, my eyes burning. The officer took the recorder from me, her fingers careful like she knew its weight. "This could be evidence," she said, slipping it into a bag. I knotted my throat too tight to speak. Mom was led downstairs, a paramedic at her side, a blanket around her shoulders. I wanted to follow to stay with her, but Hannah's grip anchored me, her trembling a reminder of how much we'd both lost. An officer approached his badge, glinting in the dim light. "We found a safe in the basement," he said, his voice low. "Locked, but we'll get it open. Looks like your dad was planning to run." His words landed like stones, heavy and cold. "The safe? The box the money Mom wrote about, it was real, and it was bigger than I'd imagined." I looked at Dad now being led downstairs, his head bowed, his fight gone. He didn't look back, didn't speak, and the silence was worse than his threats. Hannah's sobs quieted, but her arms stayed around me, and I felt the weight of her trust, fragile but real. The house, once warm with memories, felt like a stranger's, now its walls holding secrets I'd only begun to uncover. Mom was gone, safe with the paramedics. But I stood there, Hannah clinging to me, the officers' voices fading into a hum. The truth had won, but it left a hole raw and jagged, and I wasn't sure how to fill it. Dad's lies, Hannah's guilt, Mom's pain, they were all mine now, and the weight was crushing. Hannah's arms loosened around me, her warmth pulling back as the hallway emptied. The police were downstairs now, their boots scuffing the floor, their voices a low hum of procedure. Dad was gone, taken outside, the cuffs, a final mark of his fall. I stood still, my hands empty, without Mom or the recorder, my body heavy with what I'd done. Hannah's eyes met mine, red and searching, but she didn't speak. Neither did I. The silence between us was a new kind of wound, sharp and unspoken. I led her to the living room where the paramedics had left a faint smell of antiseptic. The couch sagged under us, its faded cushions a reminder of nights we'd spent here watching movies, Mom's laughter filling the gaps. Now the room felt hollow, like it belonged to someone else. Hannah curled her knees to her chest, her fingers picking at a loose thread. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice small, like she was afraid of the answer. I didn't know. I wanted to say something strong, something sure, but my mind was stuck on Mom's bruises. Dad's bowed head, the safe in the basement. "Mom's safe," I said, finally, my voice quiet. "That's what matters." But the words felt thin, not enough to cover the cracks spreading through us. Hannah nodded, but her gaze drifted to the window, where red and blue lights pulsed against the curtains. "I should have believed you," she said, almost to herself. "I kept thinking, he's Dad. He loves us." Her voice broke, and she pressed her hands to her face, hiding the tears I knew were there. Her guilt mirrored mine, but I couldn't comfort her, not yet. My own thoughts were tangled relief that Mom was free rage at Dad's betrayal, and a gnawing fear of what came next. I'd called the police, handed over the recorder, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like tearing down a house to save one room. The doorbell rang sharp and jarring. I stood, my legs stiff, and opened the door to find Mr. Thompson. His gray hair mussed his jacket thrown on haphazardly. His eyes were heavy with concern, the kind that comes from seeing too much. "Sarah," he said, his voice low. Hannah called me,
I'm so sorry. How's your mom? She's at the hospital, I said, stepping aside to let him in. They're taking care of her. My voice was steady, but my hands trembled, and I shoved them into my pockets. He nodded, glancing at Hannah, who hadn't moved from the couch. I saw them take your dad, he said, hesitating. I noticed him moving things at night boxes a week ago. Should have said something sooner. His regret was raw, and it hit me that this wasn't just our pain. It was spreading, touching everyone who knew us. I shook my head. You helped. You came. But the words felt empty, like I was comforting him when I had nothing left to give. He sat across from Hannah, his presence solid but quiet, and I sank back onto the couch, my body aching like I'd run a marathon. The police returned, one officer lingering by the door, his notebook open. We need you at the station tomorrow, he said, his tone professional but not unkind. Your mom's stable, but we'll need her statement too. And that safe, it's got documents cache. Looks like your dad was planning to run. His words were matter of fact, but they landed like a blow, confirming what Mom's diary had hinted at. I knotted my throat tight. Run. He'd planned to leave us, to leave Mom trapped to start over with his stolen money. The man I'd loved, trusted, was a stranger, and every new truth carved deeper. Hannah's head dropped, her shoulders shaking, and I wanted to reach for her, but my arms felt leaden, useless. Mr. Thompson spoke up, his voice soft. I'll drive you to the hospital later if you want. See your mom. His offer was kind, but it felt distant, like a lifeline I wasn't ready to grab. I mumbled a thanks, my mind elsewhere, stuck on the image of Dad's cuffs, Hannah's tears, Mom's fragile smile. The officer left, and the house settled into a heavy quiet, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator. Hannah didn't look at me, her hands still twisting that thread, pulling it loose. Mr. Thompson sat with us, his silence a small comfort, but the room felt colder, the walls too close. I'd saved Mom, but at what cost? The family we'd been was gone, scattered like ashes, and I sat there staring at the empty space where Dad's chair used to be, feeling the weight of my choices settle into my bones. The morning sun slipped through the kitchen blinds, painting stripes across the table. I sat with a mug of tea, the steam curling upward untouched. It had been 3 weeks since the police came, since Dad's arrest, since Mom came home from the hospital. The house was quieter now, not the tense silence of secrets, but a soft, cautious calm, like we were all learning to breathe again. I traced the mug's handle, my fingers steady, and felt a shift inside me, less raw, more grounded, like I'd found my footing on new ground. Mom was upstairs, resting, her strength returning in small bursts. Hannah was at school, her first day back, a step toward normalcy. I'd spent the morning sorting through a box of old photos, ones we'd kept in the attic, untouched for years. They weren't the posed family shots from the mantle, but candid ones. Mom at a county fair, her hair loose, laughing as she held a cotton candy. Me and Hannah building a snowman, our mittens soaked. Dad younger, strumming a guitar at a picnic. I spread them across the table, each one a memory I hadn't let myself touch until now. Looking at Dad's face, I waited for the anger to flare, but it didn't. Instead, I felt a quiet ache, like pressing a bruise that's starting to fade. He'd broken us, but he'd also been part of us, and that truth was harder to hold. I picked up a photo of him and Mom, their arms around each other, smiling at some long-forgotten barbecue. I wondered if she'd loved him then, if he'd loved her, or if the lies had already started small and hidden, waiting to grow. The doorbell rang, soft but clear, pulling me from my thoughts. I opened the door to find Mom's friend Karen, her arms full of a casserole dish, her smile warm but careful. "Thought you could use some comfort food," she said, stepping inside. "How's everyone holding up?" I took the dish, its warmth seeping through the foil, and set it on the counter. "We're getting there," I said, my voice low. "Mom's better, walking more. Hannah's trying. It's just different." I didn't know how to explain the new rhythm of our days, the way we moved around each other, careful not to bump old wounds. Karen nodded, her eyes kind but sharp, like she saw more than I said. "You're doing a lot, Sarah. More than most would." She hesitated, then pulled an envelope from her purse. "Your mom asked me to hold on to this before everything. Said you should have it when the time was right." I took the envelope, my name written in Mom's familiar script, and my chest tightened. Another letter, like the one in her closet, but this felt different, heavier. "Thanks," I said, my fingers tracing the edge. I didn't open it, not yet. I wasn't sure I was ready for more of her truths. Karen stayed for coffee, her presence a gentle anchor. We talked about small things, her garden, the weather, the new bakery downtown, avoiding the weight of what had happened. When she left, I sat back at the table, the envelope beside the photos, its presence loud in the quiet room. I picked up another picture, one of me at 10, sitting on Mom's lap, her arms around me, her smile soft and sure. I remembered that day, a summer picnic, the air sweet, with lemonade and grass. She'd whispered I was her brave girl, and I'd believed her. Now I felt that bravery again, not loud or fierce, but steady, woven into me. I'd faced Dad, saved Mom, held Hannah through her guilt. But this moment alone with these photos was mine. I wasn't the girl who'd doubted herself, who'd let Dad's lies cloud her. I was someone new, someone who could sit with the past and not flinch. I stood, leaving the envelope unopened, and walked to the backyard. The grass was overgrown, neglected, but the air was crisp, carrying the first hint of fall. I knelt by the flower bed where Mom's roses used to bloom, now wilted and sparse. My hands sank into the soil, cool and soft, and I started pulling weeds one by one, clearing space. It wasn't much, but it felt right, like I was making room for something to grow again. The sun climbed higher, warming my back, and I worked in silence, my thoughts settling. I wasn't fixed, not whole, but I was here, choosing to rebuild, to plant something new. The envelope waited inside Mom's words, a promise I'd face soon. For now, I let the earth hold me, its quiet strength enough. The soil clung to my fingers, dark and cool, as I pressed the last weed into a pile. The flower bed looked bare now, ready for something new, though I wasn't sure what. I wiped my hands on my jeans, the sun warm on my neck, and stood brushing dirt from my knees. The backyard was still the only sound, a distant lawnmower humming down the street. I glanced at the house, its windows catching the light, and felt a quiet pull to go back inside to face what waited. Upstairs, Mom's door was ajar, her soft humming drifting out. I paused, listening. It was an old lullaby, one she'd sung when I was small, and it tugged at a memory I hadn't touched in years, nights when I'd curl up beside her, safe in her voice. I stepped in, finding her sitting by the window, a quilt over her lap, her hands folding a small stack of letters. Her face was still pale, but her eyes were clearer, steadier. "You're up," I said, leaning against the doorframe, my voice soft to match the room's calm. She smiled, small but real. "Couldn't stay in bed all day. Felt like seeing the sun." She nodded to the chair beside her, and I sat, the wood creaking under me. The letters in her hands were old edges worn, tied with a faded ribbon. "Found these in the closet," she said, her fingers brushing the top one. Your dad's from when we were dating. Thought I'd burned them. My chest tightened, but not with anger, just a dull weight. Why keep them? I asked, curious, not judging. I'd seen his face in those photos, felt the ache of who he'd been. I wanted to understand her. She sighed, her gaze drifting to the window where the trees swayed gently. Part of me wanted to remember the good before everything. He wasn't always like that, Sarah. Or maybe I just didn't see. Her voice was quiet, not bitter, just honest. And it struck me how much she'd carried, how much she still did. I nodded, my hands resting in my lap. I keep wondering what I missed, how I didn't know. My words came slow, like I was sifting through them careful. I loved him too. Mom reached for my hand, her touch warm, certain. You didn't miss anything. He hid it. That's on him, not you. Her words settled over me, not erasing the guilt, but softening its edges like water smoothing a stone. We sat in silence for a while, the lullaby gone, replaced by the rustle of leaves outside. I thought about the envelope Karen gave me, still unopened, on the kitchen table. I'd been afraid of it, of more truths, but now sitting here, I felt ready, not fearless, but willing. Mom's hand in mine was a reminder of what I'd fought for, what we'd survived. Downstairs, the front door clicked open, and Hannah's voice called out, bright but tentative. Sarah, I'm home. Her footsteps were light, quicker than they'd been in weeks, and I heard her drop her backpack by the couch. Mom's eyes lit up, and I smiled, feeling the house shift just a little toward something whole. Go, Mom said, squeezing my hand before letting go. She needs you. I stood, but before I left, I picked up one of Dad's letters from her lap, its paper soft from years. I didn't read it, just held it for a moment, then set it back, a small release. You okay keeping these? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She nodded, her smile steady. They're just paper now. I walked downstairs, the air cooler, the light softer. Hannah was in the kitchen, pouring a glass of water, her school uniform wrinkled. She looked at me, her eyes cautious but open, and I saw the girl she was becoming, stronger even through the cracks. Good day, I asked, leaning against the counter. Better, she said, and her small smile was enough. I glanced at the envelope on the table, its weight no longer a threat. I didn't need to open it today. I'd face it soon, but for now, I let the moment hold me. Hannah's quiet presence, Mom's humming upstairs, the clean earth still under my nails. The hurt hadn't vanished, but I wasn't running from it anymore. I stood there breathing slow and let the stillness wrap around me, a fragile peace I'd earned. The evening light filtered through my bedroom window, soft and golden, settling on the pages of my journal. I sat cross-legged on the bed, a pen in hand, the ink flowing in slow, deliberate lines. It had been 2 months since the night the police came, since our world cracked open and spilled its secrets. The house was different now, quieter, but not empty, filled with small sounds, Mom's footsteps in the kitchen, Hannah's music down the hall, the hum of life finding its rhythm again. I wrote about it all, not to dwell, but to understand, to make sense of the woman I was becoming. I'd started journaling after Mom came home, a habit born from restless nights. At first, it was just fragments. Anger at Dad, fear for Mom, guilt over Hannah's pain. But over weeks, the words shifted, weaving into something clearer, like a map of where I'd been and where I was going. Tonight, I wrote about the market this morning, how I'd wandered the stalls alone, picking out apples, their crisp scent grounding me. I'd smiled at a stranger not out of habit, but because I wanted to, and it felt like a small victory. Mom was stronger now, her laugh coming easier, her steps surer. She'd started baking again, filling the house with the warm smell of bread, a quiet reclaiming of her space. Hannah was finding her way too, her smiles less guarded, her hugs tighter. We didn't talk much about Dad. His trial was pending, a shadow we'd face later. But we talked about everything else, school dreams, the future. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And that was enough. I set the pen down, my fingers tracing the journal's worn cover. The envelope from Karen sat on my desk, opened at last. Mom's letter inside was short, written before her ordeal, full of love and pride, urging me to trust myself. I'd read it a dozen times, each one loosening the knot in my chest. It wasn't a fix, but it was a start, a reminder that I'd been enough, even when I doubted it. Outside, the neighborhood was settling into dusk, kids' voices fading as they biked home. I stood, stretching, and walked to the window, the glass cool against my palm. The street was calm, the trees swaying gently, their leaves catching the last light. I thought about the girl I'd been scared, unsure, chasing truths in the dark. She was still part of me, but I'd grown around her stronger, quieter, more certain. I didn't need to prove anything anymore, not to Dad, not to myself. I turned back to the room, my eyes landing on a small wooden box by my bed, one I'd bought at a flea market last week. It wasn't fancy, just carved with simple lines, but it felt like mine, a place to hold things that mattered. I opened it, lifting out a single key, the one to Mom's diary, now kept in her room, a symbol of her voice reclaimed. I held it, its weight light but steady, and felt a calm settle over me, deep and real. The day had been long, full of small moments. Mom's bread, Hannah's laugh, my journal's pages. They weren't loud, but they were enough, stitching me back together, thread by thread. I closed the box, the key safe inside, and sat back on the bed, the journal open beside me. The world outside softened, and I let out a slow breath, ready for whatever came next. I leaned back against the headboard, the journal still open, its pages catching the fading light. The quiet of the evening wrapped around me, not heavy, but soft, like a blanket I'd chosen for myself. I thought about the weeks since Mom's return, how we'd been rebuilding, not just the house, but who we were. It wasn't the loud kind of healing, no grand gestures or tearful apologies. It was in the small things, Mom's hand brushing mine as we washed dishes. Hannah's shy grin when she aced a math test, the way I woke up now without that knot of dread in my chest. We were learning to live again, and I was learning who I could be. I'd started walking in the mornings just around the block, the air cool and sharp. It was my time, a pocket of stillness before the day began. I'd pass the old oak at the corner, its branches heavy with new leaves, and feel my thoughts settle, my heart steady. Those walks taught me something I hadn't expected. I didn't need to carry Dad's choices, or Hannah's doubts, or even Mom's pain. I could set them down, not out of anger, but out of choice, and keep moving forward. That was my freedom, hard won, and mine alone. Mom had found her own way too. Last week, she'd invited a few women over, neighbors and friends, all carrying their own quiet scars. They sat in the living room sharing stories over tea, their voices low but strong. She called it a support circle, a place to listen and be heard. I'd watched from the kitchen unnoticed and saw her smile, not forced, but real as she spoke. She was building something new, not just for herself, but for others, and it made me proud in a way I couldn't name. Hannah was different too, softer around the edges, like she'd let go of some of her fear. She'd started drawing again, filling sketchbooks with bold lines and colors, her way of sorting through the chaos. Yesterday, she'd shown me a sketch of the three of us, Mom, her, and me standing in a field, our hands linked. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and I'd hugged her, feeling the bridge we were rebuilding step by step. I closed the journal, my fingers lingering on its cover, and looked out the window. The sky was deep purple now, the first stars faint but there. I thought about Dad, not with the old rage, but with a kind of distance, like he was a chapter I'd read and set aside. I didn't hate him, not anymore. I didn't forgive him either, not fully. But I'd stopped letting his shadow define me. That was enough for now. The lesson I'd learned wasn't loud or simple. It was about trusting the quiet voice inside the one that whispers when something's wrong, even when the world says to stay silent. It was about choosing to act not out of fear or anger, but out of love for Mom, for Hannah, for myself. That choice had cost me, but it had also saved me, and I'd carry that truth forever, like a light I could always find. I stood, setting the journal on the desk, and felt a calm I hadn't known I could hold. The house was still Mom and Hannah, asleep, the night gentle outside. I was okay, not whole, not yet, but okay, and that was a start. I stepped to the window, my breath fogging the glass, and let the moment hold me steady and sure. What moment in your life taught you to trust your own voice? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. It's how we connect, how we grow. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe to join me on this journey. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for being here, for listening. Here's to finding our light one step at a time.